G'day everyone from down under here in Melbourne, Australia. It's 4:34 in the afternoon, I should say. It's not in the morning. I thought I'd pop on a lot later today for you people, obviously in the UK and the US, that say you can never catch me live. But I've noticed on the stream so far the people actually chatting to me are from the US, which is funny because it's really early in the morning there. So I thought we'd have a chat today about selling your A7R II for the A9, or even thinking about buying the A9, because I've had a lot of people ask me, what do you think they should do? So rather than just answering things in the comments, I thought I'd just talk to you about that on here today, to give you my thoughts about what I'm going to do and where I'm using the cameras that I've got. And whether I'll be sort of upgrading my cameras as well when these new cameras come out. So we've got a few people in here. We've got BMB Films is here, Tom is here, Mark's here, Mark Hines is here from Northern Ireland, and we've got William from Melbourne too. Oh, so another one from Melbourne as well. So I might get a few Aussies here for a change. Usually I'm doing it during the day, so they haven't got the chance to log on. But yeah, I thought I'd talk to you about what's actually going. So I've had the A9 since it was released. So I've had it for a number of months now, and I am using it extensively. But I also have the A7R II, and I also have the A6500. The A7S, and I've sold my two A7IIs that I had. I've sold those two cameras because, to be honest, I just wasn't using them anymore. And to be completely honest about it, I prefer to use the A6500 than use the A7IIs. So that was my thinking. I've got now ample cameras to back me up when I do weddings and portrait shoots and things like that. So I thought that I'd sell my two A7IIs, while I could get some decent money back for them. And they sold very fast, so I was really, really happy about that. If you are on the comments, obviously chat amongst yourselves too, and I will go back occasionally and I'll answer any questions that you put in the live chat over here. And clearly, if you're watching this a little bit later on, leave the questions down below, because I'll always answer the questions and I'll get back to you personally with those questions down below. But yeah, I've had a number of people that have said to me, David, should I sell my A7R II to purchase the A9? And I've got sort of some different thoughts about that. And first of all, I'll tell you how I'm using my cameras at the moment. With the A7R II, I'm mostly using that in studio because I love the resolution. I love that ability to crop in, and I love the detail that the A7R II gives me in studio. So whenever I'm doing a studio shoot at the moment, I am using my A7R II. Apart from the last two or three shots that I've done, and you'll see those if you look in my other videos, I've used the A9 in the studio because I wanted to see how it goes and the results that I'd actually get from it. And to be honest, I'm actually been really, really impressed. It's actually worked really, really well. The only area where I think you'd start to see differences is often I do makeup work and things like that where detail is really critical. And if you're doing high-end retouching, the more detail that you have in an image, the better it is for your high-end retouching. So it's something you do have to consider if you're shooting that type of work, which is makeup, skin, detail in clothing, things like that. You can't beat an A7R II. That's why in the high-end fashion, for instance, they're always using the medium format cameras, because they need that resolution. So my intention is still to use the A7R II in that studio setting. Unless, like I said, I'm doing something where the resolution doesn't matter so much, and then I may just use the A9, because the file size does become an issue. If you keep using the A7R II, obviously the file sizes are really large in that camera. If I don't have to use it, you save roughly half the file size if you can use something like the A9 or even the A6 500. But if you're talking about having the ability to crop in, if you're talking about the ability to retouch, retouch the skin beautifully, show details in clothes and things like that in fashion, well, you can't beat the A7R II. And that's why I'm saying if you're only shooting that type of work, or if you're shooting both, you still need two cameras. Now, with my weddings, I'm tending to take both cameras. I'm taking the A9 and, well, I'm even taking the A6 500 as well, but I'm taking the A9 and I'm going to shoot most of the day with the A9. That means all of the bride prep, it'll mean the groom getting ready, all those sort of things. I'm actually going to be shooting with the A9. Just let me check that because something just flashed up and I'm not sure what it actually is. Oh, it's nothing. Yeah, so I'll be shooting with the A9 for most of the day, but where I will be starting to use the A7R II is in the formals, and there's reasons why I do that. It's mostly because of the way that I shoot. Well, there's a couple of things at the moment. I always shoot using the Pro Photo system. At the moment, the Pro Photo Air Remote will work in manual with my A7R II, but it won't work with HSS or TTL. That will come out in an update eventually, but at the moment it won't work. But that's not the main reason why I will be using my A7R II for the formal part of the ceremonies, because the formal part of the ceremonies, they're the images that the bride and groom will blow up to massive file sizes, and I've had posters delivered and canvases and all these other prints that are as big as a wall. So if I'm producing that type of work, I want the full resolution that I can get, and that has to be the A7R II. The other issue is the dynamic range is about a stop better in the A7R II. And my work, I do often underexpose, because I usually expose for the highlights and then I'll bring the shadows back in post. And the A7R II gives me far more dynamic range to be able to pull those shadows back in than what the A9 does. Now, if you're exposing every shot correct, it's not going to be an issue. You could easily just use the A9. It's the way that I shoot, and this is why I'm saying you've got to think about the way that you shoot. I'm always deliberately a little bit more on the dark side, the way that I shoot. My images are always a little bit moody, and I'm always tending to shoot, like I said, protect the highlights, let the shadows fill in, and I know that I can bring them back in with the A7R II, and I've demonstrated how much you can bring them back from the A7R II. Now, I have done the same shot where I've done the A9 and the A7R II, and if you go back to a few videos, you'll actually see where I did that when I showed it in a wedding, and there was quite a difference that I could pull back with the A7R II as against the A9. Now, some of you may say it's no big deal because I can just expose correctly and you shouldn't be trying to drag everything back. But like I said, that's the way that I like to work. I love to be able to protect the highlights and then pull in the shadows later on. And it's just the way that I tend to love shooting. So for me, that's a really important thing. So for me, I definitely need the two cameras. Will I be upgrading to the new cameras? I'll talk about that soon. Now, having said that, if I'm just shooting generally, just going out, now if I was just called out to do a shoot now somewhere, I would more than likely grab the A9, because to be honest, once you start shooting with the A9, it's very, very hard to go back to any other camera. That includes the A6500 and it also includes the A7R II, because the focusing particularly is so good in that camera that it's a game changer when you're trying to do things. It can mean the difference of grabbing a moment and not getting a moment. The eye focus is incredible. It's so much better than if I'm using the A7R II. Now remember, if I'm using the A7R II in a wedding scenario or something like that, or in studio, that doesn't matter because it's more of a controlled environment and I'm not moving so fast, particularly when I'm doing the formals in weddings. I slow down a little bit. So it's not an issue that I don't have that incredibly fast focus. But if I was shooting something like a dance recital, if I was shooting, and I often do dances outside and they're doing jumps and things like that, well, clearly the A9 is going to be such a big step over using the A7R II. So I'd love to know some of your thoughts about what I've just said and whether you agree with what I'm saying, whether you think it is an issue. If you do have the A7R II as well, let me know whether you also think, we can talk about it now in the live chat, but let me know whether you think that it's something that you've been considering moving up. Previously, I was never worried about dual card slots, but since I've had that in that camera, I've thought about it a couple of times and I thought, well, it is a relief if something did ever go wrong. I've always got a backup, and I am shooting RAW on both. No, I'm shooting JPEG on one of the on the backup camera. So at least if something did fail, I've got a backup on the back. The touch screen on the A9 is really, really handy, and I use that all the time as well. And it really is good when you're doing things like details and things like that, where I can just use the touch screen on the back to get focus and move between things. It's just so much easier, and I've found the touch screen on the A9 to be better than the A6500's touch screen. So it is quite usable. It could be better, but it's so much better than not having that touch screen at all. I love the dials on the top. I love being able to change your focus from continuous to single and everything on the top of the dials rather than have to go through menus to actually change that. I also love on the A9 having that quick menu so that I can go into there and grab things that I use all the time very, very quickly, instead of having to go through the camera and just manually fiddle through trying to find something through the Sony menu systems that can take so long. So I've set up my favorite menu in the back with all of the things that I tend to like to use all the time, and it really, really is good. The low light focusing I've found is really good on the A9. I did a wedding, at the moment here it's off wedding season, they start again for me next month, but I did do a wedding which was in incredibly challenging conditions, like really dark, really dark, and all the other cameras that I've used have struggled in that, and I used to use D4Ss in that, and they struggled in that scenario. Well, the A9 was easily as good as what I had with my D4S, which is known to have really, really good low light focusing. So the A9 is a game changer in that respect too. It starts up quicker than what the other cameras have started up. So it's little things like that. The viewfinder is beautiful in it. So these are the things where I'm saying to you that it is addictive if you buy an A9, and it's very hard to go back to the other cameras and use them. But like I said, for me, I am still going to be using those cameras for things like that portraiture, for the slower set shots, studio set shots, the wedding formals, things like that. I'll be using it. Just let me come over here. Just let me see if anyone's asking any questions. I think it's a Provo said, "Hi David, I'm from India. Should I upgrade from the 5D Mark III to the Sony A7R II? I'm just a hobby photographer wanting to turn pro." I mean, I would look, as probably most of you know who have been following me over a long period of time, I was a complete Nikon shooter. I had, I think it was $40,000 of gear that I sold. So I did sell big to move over. I had the D4, I had a couple of D4Ss, I had a D810, I had a D750, I had all the lenses, the 24-70, the 70-200, the 14 to 24. I mean, these were all, and all their high-end lenses, the 2.8 lenses. So it was a big decision for me to shift over. Now, why did I shift over? I shifted over for a number of reasons. I was a bit tired of Nikon not innovating, and I really wanted to make sure that I could get the money back at that period of time, because I have always tended to be able to pick when things change. And I was under the impression that mirrorless is definitely the future, and I still think mirrorless is the future, and I also think that Canon and Nikon will move over to that eventually as well. But at the time for me, there was no one really else that I can move to that had full frame. Now, I obviously love shooting full frame because I came from full frame Nikon cameras, so I wanted to also get full frame. So the only choice for me was to get Sony. Also, I've moved very much into Fusion, which is doing video and stills at the same time, and the only full frame camera I could buy at the time for that was Sony. So that's the reason why I shifted. So if you were thinking about moving from Canon, the A7R II is still an incredible body, and that's why I'm saying to people it's at the moment, I just got a thing from Amazon saying they're selling it at the moment on special. I should put the link down. I'll put the link down below. They're selling them on special for $2,600 US, which is an incredible bargain for that camera for what you're getting. Now, I did see an interesting article yesterday. Now, remember, this has only just come out, so I'm not sure how accurate it is, but there was a report that I read yesterday that the A7R II, the dynamic range, is still better than what the Nikon 850 is. That's the new camera. So this is a 2-year-old sensor, and the Sony A7R II, the dynamic range is better than what that camera is. Now, I'm not sure how it will relate to everything else. I'm just telling you what I read yesterday. So clearly this sensor is still completely relevant, and that's why I'm saying to you now that I won't be upgrading the A7R II. I will be keeping that camera, even if they bring out an A7RII or something like that. For me at this stage, I don't need any more megapixels than what that camera is giving me. I'm quite comfortable with working at that level. I'm happy with around that 40 megapixel resolution. Plus, the dynamic range and everything in that camera is outstanding, and the focus is good enough for what I'm doing. I mean, it's not as good as the A9, but it's still very, very good. So I'm really happy with that. Plus, the video side of it it also has the picture profiles, which possibly, well, the A9 hasn't got the picture profiles. So if I do want to shoot things like sign or the flat profiles, S-Log, I can do that with the A7R II, which I can't do now with the A9. So that is another issue that is a bit frustrating with how Sony haven't included those options in the A9. I'm just hoping eventually they may bring it out with firmware, but they may not because it's taken a long time. The camera's been out now for a while and it hasn't come out. So I don't think I will be upgrading at all. The other thing too is the Play Memories app. Now, a lot of people saying you don't need that in high-end cameras, but I'm using that Play Memories app to get around the 30-minute recording time. I can't do that with the Sony A9 because there's no Play Memories app. So it is another issue as well. So I'd almost buy the Sony A7R II just for that feature alone for me, because if I'm shooting video, I don't want to have the camera turned off in 30 minutes. So it is a real issue for me as well. So that's another issue too that you have to consider if you're thinking about upgrading. So I think the A7R II is still going to be a really good camera for the next couple of years. It is going to be a relevant camera for the next couple of years. It's still going to be taking amazing photos for the next couple of years. But I'm not going to lie to you in the fact that I've now have trouble picking it up because I'm used to my A9. And that's why I'm saying to you, if you don't have an A9, you would love the A7R II. And I still adore it, but the A9 takes it to another level. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about, was that I wouldn't just sell it alone. I wouldn't sell the A7R II just to get the A9 if you need the resolution. And that's the thing that you actually have to consider. If dynamic range is an issue for you, if having the ultimate resolution for you, like if you're a landscape shooter, if you're shooting in studio all the time, there's no reason to go for the A9. So you would only buy the A9 if you have the reason to use it. So let me just come over to here just for a couple of these questions, because I'd like to see what people are saying over here. BMB Films said, I always wanted a Sony A7R II. I have the Nikon D750. Well, the thing is, I'm actually saying, you know what, if I would love the new Nikon 850. That is going to be an incredible camera. Everything I've seen about that camera is it seems to be an amazing camera. So if you have the D750, I think the 850 is a really good upgrade for you. So I wouldn't discount that camera at all yet. So, you know, it's still a great camera. Jagdeep said, hi David, what will be your recommendation for a walk-around lens for Sony a7 II? A walk-around lens, well, like I said, I'm now going most of the time, I'm actually shooting primes. So for me, I do have the 2470 f4, but I carry f4s. I've got the 2470, I've got the 70-200 f4, and I've got the 16-35 f4. To be honest, if I was just a walk-around lens for me, the perfect lens for me would be the 35 2.8. I love that 35 focal length for me as a walk-around lens, but that's me. That's the focal length that I love, and I adore that little Sony 35 2.8, and I take that all the time when I'm doing street photography or just going out, and I know I don't need zoom lens and things like that. So if it was me personally, just as a perfect walk-around lens, 35 2.8 would be the lens that I'd carry. What else have we got here? Mel said, I need a Sony camera now. The A9 will fit the bill 100% for weddings and events. No question about that. The trouble is price. Presently, the second best thing now is the A7R II. Just let me grab a drink. And that's the thing that you have to decide too, whether you can afford to purchase the A9. Now here in Australia, for instance, that camera cost me $7,000. So it was incredibly expensive. It's not a cheap camera at all. Whereas, like I said, I saw the A7R II today at Amazon, and that was $2,600. So it's an incredible buy. And I think they had one for $2,400 on Amazon, but that's probably grey market. So yeah, you've got to justify what you want, you know, and what you shoot is the main thing as well. Mark said, oh, hang on. Jadeep said, should try the Sigma 24-104 f4. Yeah, and look, I used to use the Sigma Art series when I was shooting Nikon, and they were amazing lenses. I loved the 35 1.4 that I had from Sigma. Mark said, I bought the Sony Alpha A99 a few months ago and love it. And I don't think that camera gets enough love. Look, the problem for me is, Mark, I can't talk about that camera fully because I've never used it. I mean, that's the issue for me. I've made a commitment to go E-mount, so I just can't talk about the A99. But that basically, from what I've read in specs, is pretty very similar to the Nikon D850. So it's a really, really good camera, and people who've had it love it. I've never heard a bad thing about that camera. Mel said, if you can wait, it's best to wait for the A7 III. If not, the A7R2, or go with the A6500 and the A6300 as an interim. The reason is AF, speed and accuracy events need that. Yeah, and that's the thing. And that's the reason, like I said, I sold my A7 IIs because I found that the focusing was just not good enough on them. Look, if you use really, really fast glass, like if you put the Sony 55, which is the fastest lens I think Sony has for focusing, they will focus reasonably good. But it's still nowhere near what the A7R2 is or the A6500, and definitely not anywhere near the A9. I think if you're on the boat at the moment, I would definitely wait. And this is why I'm saying to people who I've talked to and left comments, Sony will have to probably announce sometime this year the new A7 III, and I think it's probably going to be released early next year. And it's probably going to have most of the features of the A9. The things that I'm not certain about, it definitely won't have the speed of the A9 for its processing and things like that, but hopefully it will have things like the dual card slots, and it will have the joystick at the back. To be honest, I don't use that joystick much at all on the back of the A9 because I tend to use the touchscreen a hell of a lot, but that's just the way that I shoot. But I'm hoping that the new A7 III, which should come around, it probably will be around 3 to 4, Australian. So if that comes out and it has most of the features of the A9, well, that's going to be a killer camera. And I think that will possibly be announced later this year, and it will come out early in next year. So it may be worthwhile waiting if you can. If you're not in a hurry, I probably would tend to wait a little bit. The other thing too is I adore my A6500. That is one of my favourite cameras I've ever bought. If you're thinking about going APS-C, and honestly, do not hesitate shooting APS-C. There's no problem with it at all. If I showed my clients, they would not be able to tell the difference between the A6500 and my A7R2. It's gorgeous. And you put a decent lens on that, like something like the 24 1.8, and it's stunning. The 55 also is stunning on that camera as well. So it's a fantastic all-around camera. There's nothing beats it for video and for stills at the moment. Ollie said, David, would you consider an A7 II to be a viable option for going semi-pro? I wouldn't buy an A7 II, Ollie, at all now. No. If I had that choice, I'd be buying the A6500 rather than an A7 II. If you're thinking about buying an A7 II, wait until the A7 III is released at least, but I definitely wouldn't buy an A7 II now. It's too old, too outdated. Now, Mel said, in events, the photography and low light IQ, speed, accuracy, AF pixel count of 20 megapixel to 24 megapixel is usually enough. 42 megapixel is okay. If it gives up on AF. IQ and high ISO, not good. Yeah, that's the thing that I found. I found that the 42 megapixels is too big, and I was shooting in crop mode, and then it becomes an issue if you need to shoot wide. So it is an issue, but the A7R2 is incredible for ISO. I've actually found that camera is really, really good in ISO. But the low light focusing was good, but it's not as good as what the A9 is. The A9 is definitely a big step up from what I had in the A7R2. But I think I agree with you. I think the 20 to 24 megapixel is that perfect size for event photography. And that's why I'm saying I think the A9 is a perfect camera if you're shooting events. And I think it's interesting how Sony don't market it at that. But after using it for a period of time, I think that is the perfect wedding camera. The A9. I think it's probably the best camera out there for doing that type of thing, like the bride walking down the aisle, all these different things, you know, that you can do that where it nails a focus and you just don't have to worry about it, and it's got that tracking, it's got the good focusing that you can use, the touch screen. So I do think it's probably the best event camera out there, but the A7 II is just too dated, so I wouldn't be buying that camera now. What else have we got? Mel said, ideally the A9 and the A7R III go hand in hand, and that I agree with that. That's why I'm going to keep both. until the future where the A7R III gains the low light AF speed and other features of future development. Well, it will. I mean, it's only a matter of time. Ben's in there. G'day, Ben. How you going, mate? He's going to get the 850, which is good. What else have we got? We've got Mel said... Mel's talking to Ollie. Is saying the A7 II is okay. Its AF and IBIS is no longer up to par by today's standard. No 4K, and that's the problem. And that's the thing for me. Like I said, I would buy an A6500 if you were worried about money and you couldn't afford any more than what you could spend on an A7 II. I'd be buying an A6500 in a heartbeat if I had the choice between the two cameras. And if you had to, put full frame glass on it, so you're always ready to move to full frame if you have to. What else have we got? I think it's Bahai. I'm not sure about how to pronounce it. Said, good morning. Dave said, I'm loving my A6500 with the 2470 to 2.8. I will get the A7 III as soon as the pre-order is announced. And like I said, hopefully that will be sometime this year. I'm not sure if I'll get it yet. I may wait till next year and get it. At the moment, like I said, I'm pretty well happy with what I've got, with having the A9, the A7R2, A6500 and A6300, and I've also got an A7S, so I'm quite happy, and also a GH5, so I'm quite happy with what I've got at this stage, so I don't think I'll be getting the A7 III when it comes out, but obviously I will get it eventually. I'm hoping more for an A6700. If that comes out, the A7000 to replace the A6500 with hopefully 4K 60p, that'll be the one I'll be getting next. What else? Dave said, I'm loving the A6500 with the 2470 to 2.8. Oh, I've already read that. Could you review the Sigma 30 1.4, f1.4, I think it is, DCN for Sony? Yeah, I haven't got that lens, unfortunately. So I haven't been able to review it. I've used it in a camera shop and it seemed to be really, really good. The issue for me is my favourite focal length is a 35. So that's why I have the 24 1.8 on my Sony. It's because I love that 35mm focal length. So for me, my two favourite focal lengths are the 35 and the 85. So the 30 won't give me that 35mm focal length. I need to put the 24 on to get that, if that makes sense to you. That's why on the A6500, my favourite lens is the 24 1.8. I adore that lens. It's incredibly sharp. It's beautiful. It focuses in within an inch or so away from the subject, so you can get incredibly close, like it's almost like a macro. It's fast. I adore that lens, and it gives me the 35mm field of view. The other lens I love to use on it is the 55 1.8. Now that's a full frame lens, but it gives me the 85 focal length. So they're the two lenses that I love to use on the A6500. If I'm traveling, I just love to use the 18 to 105. Fantastic lens for travel, and I've put videos on it that sort of shows that. Mel said, a good solution is to get the A6500 or the A6300 as a temporary solution and then get good glass. And that, I agree, Mel, and that's what I probably would be doing. I'd get the A6500 and buy full frame glass, because you can use that with no problem at all on the A6500. I do that all the time. And then you could look at the A7 III when it's released. What else? Jadip said, what about the Sigma 24-105? Yeah, I haven't used that lens, so I can't say. Like I said, at this stage, for me personally, I've bought everything native format. So I've bought everything so it's the Sony mount. There's reasons why I've done that is because of things like focus, stabilization, all these things that I want to get eye detect. I just want to make sure that I'm just using the best that I can get for the camera. So to be honest, because I'm running this as a business, the expense is not such a big thing for me. So if the Sony lens is a little bit more expensive, I don't mind paying for that to have it full featured on the cameras. So that's the reason why I haven't gone for any of the other mounts at this stage. So is there any other questions that you'd like me to answer? Now, don't forget to, if you're coming in later and you'd like to leave the questions down below, I will get back to you. I'll also have a live shoot that the live show that I'll have on Friday, or it's Thursday in the UK and also in the US, like the Sony rumours and news and things like that, and I go through a live shoot and stuff like that we go through. But let me know if you've got any last questions, guys, before I finish for the day. I've got to go and have some dinner, I think. So is there any last questions before we finish? Otherwise, you could leave them down below. Looks like that might be about it, I think. So the questions seem to have finished, which is fine. So I hope today that, well, like I said, you've enjoyed me popping on a little bit later, mostly for, like I said, the people in the UK and Europe and places like that where I haven't been able to talk to you guys live. So I thought that I'd do one a little bit later for you guys, and I'll try every so often to do one a little bit later for you guys as well. That way you'll be able to chat with me rather than chat, and leave me questions. Dave said, just wondering, have you had any glitches with your smaller focus yet? No. Are you talking about the Focus HD? No, I love it. It's been fantastic. I'm still waiting for my Sony battery, though. They were on pre-order on B&H, so I'm still waiting for the battery for it and also the lead. So I haven't been able to use it with my A6500. I'm only using it at this stage with my GH5, but no, it's perfect. I adore that little thing. It's fantastic. Have you had problems, Dave, with it? I'm just wondering. Let me know. Ollie said, David, which lenses would you recommend to start your start of portraiture with? If you're just starting, the two lenses I would recommend, to be totally honest, is the 35 and the 85 if you're dealing with primes. So they're the perfect ones, and you need around that 1.8 to 1.4. If you're dealing with my perfect lens, to be honest, is the 85. I think the 85mm is the perfect lens. Now, you can get the Sony version of that, which is incredibly cheap. I've got the Batis, which is a lot more expensive. But to be honest, I think the Sony is probably just as good. And the Sony is much cheaper. The difference with the Sony is it's not weather sealed, and it's also not, it hasn't got stabilization. So that was an issue when I used that on the A6 III. But the perfect portrait lens, if you had to buy one lens, I would probably just get the Sony 85. That way, at least you can get that beautiful depth of field as a portrait lens. But then you do need something that's a little bit wider. Some people will say 24-70 is fine, and I've got that with the f4 version, but I very rarely use it. But it is a lens that you could actually use if you wanted to. What else have we got? Ollie said, thanks for taking the timing of this live show. Great for morning coffee. Time at work. Thanks, Ollie. Mel said, what's your take on the 24-70 f4? That lens is getting so reviews. I can't afford the 2.8. I really like it. Like I said, I've got it and I've got no problems with it at all. I often use that in studio. Like I said, I'm tending not to use zooms much now at all. I've just got this real thing for primes at the moment, and I'm mostly shooting primes. I take my 24-70, the 70-200 f4 with me on weddings because I like the compression, but that's the only time I'll bring that lens out, when I need compression to bring the background in. If I don't need the compression, I'll just use the 35 1.4 and I'll use the 85 Batis all day, and I'm happy to be using that. If low light becomes an issue, I use the 55 because the 55 1.8 is the fastest lens if you're dealing with low light. That thing is absolutely amazing if you're struggling in low light conditions. So if you are doing events, things like that, where you know you're going to have to work in really, really low light, get the 55 1.8. So do you calibrate new lenses when you buy them? No, you don't have to with Sony. There's no calibration for Sony lenses. That's the beauty. That's the great thing about working with this mirrorless system. When I had Nikon, I was always calibrating the lenses, and it was a pain. You had to always worry about back focus and front focus. You don't have to worry about that with the Sony system at all. They're perfect as they are. M. Wood said, oh, that's the one I just read. Dave said, yeah, I've had the menu system go all random on me a few times. I updated the firmware to latest version, and it has only happened once in the last few days now. Yeah, I haven't had that happen, Dave. When was it a new version, or I put a new version of firmware on, I think, when I first got it. There's not a new version come out since then, is it? But no, I've had no issues with that at all. You'd have to keep an eye on that, because if it keeps doing it, I'll be thinking about returning it. M. Wood said mirrorless usually no longer need calibration, and that's right, they don't. They don't need calibration on their lenses. It's read directly from the sensor, which is true if you read that question. Only digital SLRs need them. I bought a target which looks like a triangle, and it has all these targets on it that I used to use for calibrating my lenses, because they did always end up having back focus or front focus on them, so I used to have to calibrate them all the time. You don't have to worry about with the mirrorless system, so that's one of the best things about that. You don't get that back focus or front focus anymore. Any more questions, guys? Otherwise, we'll call it a day. I would, though, talking about that, Dave, about your focus, yeah, I'd keep a check on that. Use it extensively for a few days and see if it does it again. If it does do that again with the menus going a bit funny, I'd think about returning that, because I haven't had that happen at all. So, all right, guys, well, we might call it a day. So I hope you all have a great day today. I'm really, like I said, I'm just about to have dinner. Bahai said, how do they compare in sharpness, the Sony 24 1.8 and the Sigma 30? I don't know about the Sigma, but I know the Sony is as sharp as I would ever want it to be. It's incredible. If you go back to a few videos down, you'll see where I use it in a wedding, and I actually show the samples that came off that lens, and like I said, it's incredible. I love that lens. It's one of my favourite lenses I've got. I always carry that with the A6500. It's a bit dearer though. I'm not sure how dear the 30mm is, the Sigma, but the Sony one is just over $1,000, I think, but wow, totally worth it for me. Do you ever use the A7RII color checker passport? Yes, I do. Have I got it in here? No, I haven't. Yes, I've got the video one, and I've also got the still one. I use that all the time. Great for setting white balance. So it's great. Yeah, and I recommend that fully. What else have we got? Which Sony is the best for filming video right now? If you're talking about filming video right now, A6500. I think that's even better than the A7S II. Look, if you're dealing with low light, obviously the A7S II is the camera to go to. But if you're talking about just shooting video alone with autofocus, having profiles, everything else, the A6500 is by far the best Sony camera at this stage. So the A9 video is actually remarkable. It's really, really good, but you're limited because you haven't got any profiles at all. So it can be an issue. But the A9 video is outstanding, but it just doesn't have those features like the A6500 does. What else have we got? Mel said, thanks, it's 3:09 here in the Philippines. Odd time for you to go online. Yeah, and I just thought, Mel, like I'd go online for the Europeans, the UK and places like that always say that they can't see me live. So I thought I'd come in on their morning just for a change, because usually it's their bedtime where I'm on. Dave said, yeah, will do, thanks. Awesome product though. Yeah, it is. He's talking about the small focus HD. And Wood said, I use the Sony 24 1.8 Zeiss on my A6500 and it's my favourite lens, along with the Sony 85 1.8. Yeah, I agree. I love that 24 1.8. Guys, honestly, I can't recommend that lens enough. It's superb. It's brilliant. Alliance Dance Network said, we were thinking of buying the A7S II. No, I wouldn't be. I wouldn't buy that camera at all. Wait, because there'll be a new version of that coming out shortly. And then you may get that a lot cheaper if you are thinking about buying it. But to be honest, the only reason why I buy the A7S II is if you have to shoot like incredibly dark situations. Up to 6500, I can shoot with my A6500 all the time. And it's really, really good. The focus is just so much better. The video quality is better. You've got the beautiful 4K, the stabilization, everything is so much better in that camera. So I wouldn't be buying the A7S II at this stage, but that's me. You know how you shoot. If you're shooting in very, very low light scenarios, well then obviously you would need it. But for me, I bring in lighting. So if I'm working in a very dark conditions, I'll actually bring lighting in. So it's not a problem for me. What else? Catch your mate Ben's gone. He's probably gone for tea. Alliance Network's also gone. All right, guys, we're going to leave it there. Look for me on Thursday, your time. Obviously, if you're in Australia, it'll be Friday morning or Friday lunchtime. I'll be on. Until then, I'll see you all again, guys. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.